All right, ladies and gentlemen, yeah. So my book, The Islamic Dilemma, is now out. It came out on the 25th of April, last Saturday. It's doing very, very well, thank you. I'm now number one ranked in the Quran category internationally, and in evangelism, and in Islamic studies. So it's incredibly well received, which is amazing. John Fontaine didn't give it a very good review, which is sad. He reviewed it 4 hours after it came out.
4 hours?
Yeah, so he had read it a few times by then. But anyway, the book is The Islamic Dilemma. And what is the Islamic Dilemma? Well, it is the best argument against Islam overall. Of all the arguments you can come up with, I think the Islamic Dilemma is one of the best, if not the best argument.
Yes.
So what do I mean by that?
Tell us.
Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't matter if a Muslim is Sunni, Shia, Quran only. It doesn't matter. This argument cuts at the very root of their faith because it shows one of the main aspects of the Quran. And that is that the Quran affirms the inspiration, preservation, and authority of the previous scriptures. And what are those, ladies and gentlemen? That is our biblical text. It is the Torah and the Gospel at a minimum. And it says that they are preserved. It says they're from Allah. It says that they are authoritative and that Christians and Jews will be punished if they don't follow them prior to the coming of the Quran. So, ladies and gentlemen, Muslims are in a really difficult position with this argument. They don't have a way out. They don't have a way out of dealing with it. The Quran, scholars have said about 25% of the Quran deals with prior prophets. And the prior prophets, what are most of them? Most of them are from the Jewish and Christian tradition. This is a huge aspect of the Quran. We're not talking about one verse. We're not talking about 2 verses, 3, 4. No. There are 18 musaddiq, that is confirmed verses in the Quran scattered across the whole of the Quran. 18 of them. Imagine if we had something in... One second, my friend. Good to see you, man. We'll have a chat at some point. Imagine if in our Bible we had 18 verses saying something that we just couldn't fathom and we couldn't agree with and we couldn't reconcile. But thanks be to God, we don't have that in our Bible. But in the Quran, it's there. And if you think this is problematic, this is the beginning. These 18 verses, that's just a start. You look at all the other verses that make it absolutely clear through one way or another that the Christians and Jews have to follow what they have in the 7th century because it's preserved, authoritative, and inspired. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a knockdown argument. I was privileged enough to work with David Wood and his team for the last year. For research for this book, I read the entire Quran for the second time now. The entire Quran from Surah Al-Fatiha to Surah Al-Nas, 1 to 114. I read it all and I made notes and we developed tools to analyze the Quran to get all the verses that are related to the previous scriptures. We put them all together. And me and David Wood's team, we're responsible for what you see now in this book, The Islamic Dilemma. It's available as paperback, hard copy, and Kindle ebook. It's available now worldwide on Amazon. You can search it. Like I said, it's a bestseller across multiple categories, so it's doing really well.
How long did it take you to put it together, Chris?
It took me, in terms of writing, about 6 months. But that doesn't count the time I put in before that, which was just research. I was researching and learning this before I even knew I was going to write a book. But then it was 6 months to write it, and then it was the last 3 months I've been getting a professional copy editor, I've been getting a book cover design professionally, and now it's finally out there. Now it's finally out there for everyone to see.
Wow. Chris, so why should Muslims get the book?
Muslims should get the book because if you want to be able to look at the Quran honestly, you don't want to look at these traditions, because Muslims will they'll read into the Quran explanations that are not in the Quran itself. They'll get scholars hundreds of years later who go, oh, when the Quran explicitly confirms the Torah and Gospel, it doesn't mean that, it actually just means this very specific thing that isn't written anywhere in the Quran. And it's like, okay, so where does it say that in the Hadith? Well, it doesn't say that in the Hadith either. Right, so how did you come to that conclusion? Well, if we don't have that conclusion, then the Quran is in error. So they had to go outside their tradition to come up with these answers. So Muslims, if you want an honest reflection from an academic perspective, this is a thoroughly sourced book. It was written in the Chicago manual style of writing.
Okay.
And if you want to have your faith challenged, but in a fair and non-insulting way, I don't insult or anything like that. I give a fair and academic critique. And if Muslims, you want to see that, then I suggest you pick up the book, The Islamic Dilemma.
Okay. Well done, well done, well
All right, God bless you all, ladies and gentlemen.
Question.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. When did Muslims first start saying that that this is not the Bible is corrupt?
Right.
When did that
Okay, so basically Ibn Hazm in the 11th century, he was in Al-Andalusia, so basically Spain. 11th century, yeah. So so before then there was a multitude of Muslim opinions. And they ranged from, well, the Bible is authoritative and it is there, but Christians and Jews have misunderstood it, they misinterpret it. And then there were some Muslims that said, well, actually, I've seen a copy of it, and this copy of it looked bad, so that copy I condemn. But there are other copies that are Islamically in line. So there were a range of opinions, but Ibn Hazm was infamous because what he did is he basically compared the Quran to the Torah, and he said there is no way, based on our theology, the Sunni theology of his day, that he could reconcile the Torah with the Quran. So for example, he was saying, look, we believe in the doctrine of Isma. We believe that the prophets cannot intentionally sin. The Sunnis believe that, and the Shia actually take it to the next level. So both groups believe in this from an Islamic perspective, but they go, look, you look at the Torah, it says Noah got drunk. It says Lot, he had sex with his daughters. It says Judah had sex with his daughter-in-law. These things are not, you can't align that with this doctrine. Therefore, we have to say that the Bible as a whole, both the Torah and the Gospel, has been corrupt and ultimately lost. So he wanted a complete separation. He wanted to cut it off. He didn't want people to say, well, maybe there's some, maybe some isn't. The closest he would get is maybe some things just happen to be true, but it's purely circumstantial. It's not as if there's actual revelation still in the Gospel and Torah that the Christians and Jews had in the 11th century. And since then, Muslims have basically kept to the same doctrine, because they haven't really had to deal with it because the internet wasn't around. You couldn't really check this stuff out. But now, thanks to modern scholarship in New Testament studies, for example, and manuscripts, we can know, thanks to the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Septuagint, all these things, that what they had even before the time of Jesus is actually authentic and preserved with what we have today. The meanings are the same, which has put Muslims in a really difficult position, which is why you have John Fontaine, you have Dean Responds, Libiano. They're coming up with alternative new innovations in Islamic studies to try and solve this issue, because the last position held by scholars, held by laymen for the last 1,000 years has been in error. And now they're having to revise it. This tells us something, ladies and gentlemen. It tells us that Islam is in a real difficult position right now. They don't have answers to this problem. And the internet is spreading this like wildfire. And Muslims are exposed to it. And they have to look at people like Muhammad Hijab and him trying to act a fool to try to distract Muslims from the weight of this very dilemma. But ladies and gentlemen, thank God that as Christians, we don't have this issue. Thank God that we can actually say, yeah, I agree when the Quran says it confirms our Torah and Gospel. We believe in the Torah and Gospel, the authentic one, the one that goes back to the earliest followers and companions of these prophets. And yet, Muslims don't believe that. They have to believe what Muhammad said 700 years after Jesus. So, I hope that's an answer to your question, Mike.
So are you confirming for 300 years at least, the consensus was the text, the written text was not corrupted, or the written text, uncorrupted written text was available, some copies may have been corrupted.
Yeah. All right, just to reiterate the question. So Mike is saying, so am I saying for the first 3 generations, 3 centuries after Islam, after Muhammad, that the majority of Islamic scholars, they actually held that there was some way in which the biblical text was intact? So the answer is, for the most part, yes, overwhelmingly. Now, that isn't to say that they didn't think that Christians and Jews misinterpreted their scriptures, and that isn't to say that they didn't encounter copies that they themselves denied. Because you need to think about this pragmatically, like put yourself in their situation. If you're a Muslim scholar and you come across a Christian who has a copy of the Injil, the Gospel, and you read it, and you realize it says things that are not compatible with the Quran, then the easiest way to deal with that is simply to say, well, this copy is corrupt, but the other copies aren't. There really is an Islamic Injil. There really is an Islamic Torah somewhere. It just so happens that the one held by this Christian or this Jew has been corrupted with. And that was a much easier and satisfactory explanation for the first 300 years. But Ibn Hazm, when he looked at it, he went, oh, okay, well, we've kind of encountered a lot of Jews and Christians at this point. We know what their scripture is in many different countries across the world, and they're telling us it's always been this way. So how do we resolve that? And his answer was, okay, cut them apart. We're just going to say that the Torah has always been corrupt, the Bible, the Gospel has always been corrupt, and we're going to separate them. And by doing so, he went against the Quran. I hope that answers your question, Mike. Does anyone else have any questions about the Islamic dilemma and the fact that the Quran confirms the inspiration, preservation, and authority of the Torah and Gospel, and yet it also contradicts it?
Over 100 Bible, bro.
That guy's crazy, so we won't accept him.
Too many Bible you have.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave it there. What are the biggest challenges in writing the book? Being disciplined enough to keep doing it, because it's easy when you've got lots of stuff in your mind and you want to write it down, but the book ended up being larger than the Quran. It stands at 84,000 words, and I promise you, when you write anything that's 84,000 words long, I mean, my uni dissertation was not 84,000 words long. Mate, it gets, you can't store it all in your head all at once, and you have to remind yourself of what you've already written and what you've already covered at different places. But I was going to the library 2 times a week for 6 hours, just working on the book, because it was important for me to keep at this. I'm the sort of person that doesn't give up when I start something. I'm passionate about this, and I had the backing of David Wood and his team, and thanks be to God, the Holy Spirit led me to make this work. So I hope to glorify not me, but his kingdom. The glory and kingdom belongs to God. Awesome. There we go. I have so much to say to that, but anyway, right, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's it. God bless you all. Thanks for watching.